Hey guys, welcome back to the course. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about FFF and angels. And trust me, that's going to make sense here in a second. So typically after an entrepreneur starts their business, they'll start off with the smallest type of funding source they can, which is often bootstrapping and personal savings. Typically after that, once they've exhausted their resources and they need more, they'll start moving up to different types of capital and moving up as they need it. Now, this is where the point of this lecture fits in. So the next logical step in funding is what we call friends, family, and fools, FFF. Now, it's a little bit of a joke in the venture capital industry to call it this FFF and to use the word fools, but essentially what they're joking about is that it's friends, family, and anyone dumb enough to invest in you. Now, they make that joke, obviously, because at the very beginning, if you're raising money from your friends and family, the requirements for the investment are going to be very low. It's going to be based off your personal relationship, and those people are not going to be savvy enough to know whether or not your business idea is good or your business is going to succeed. This is a legitimate funding source, and the vast majority of companies will start off by getting small loans from their friends and family, usually enough money that they can stick together to actually get something done and to get to a point where we can move on to the next funding source, which is what we call angels. Now, one point I want to make before moving on is that if you raise money, and raise just means receive investment, from your friends and family, while it is easy to get that money, and it probably takes the littlest amount of time of all the other funding sources, it also comes with some strings attached. Now remember, with friends and family, you have a relationship with them, which is great because it means that they can forego other criteria that investors will typically want. But it also means that if your business doesn't succeed and you waste their money, it could potentially ruin the relationship. You can run away from an institutional investor, but it's kind of hard to run away from your family. Now, angels, on the other hand, are just rich individuals or high net worth individuals who frequently invest in small businesses and startups. Typically, we call them angels because they're individuals and they're also someone that helps you out. They typically invest in startups at a stage where you need more capital than you can get from your friends and family, but at the same time, you don't qualify for a bank loan and you probably don't yet have a lot of revenue or any at all. Angels are often champions of your company or well-known people in your community. Angel investments typically can range anywhere from $20,000 anywhere up to $200,000, but typically it's always going to be more than what you'd get from your friends and family and a lot less than what you could get from venture capital. One thing that's important with angels is that you can string them together to make larger amounts of money if you need. Now, angels are weird and they're hard to find, right? Because really they're just rich individuals who invest in startups. So unless you know them, how exactly do you find them? We'll talk a little bit in a sec about some techniques you can use to find them. But one thing that's worth knowing is that angels typically know each other and have pretty well-defined affiliations. So what I mean by that is if you meet one angel, it's very, very likely that they know 10, 20 other ones. It's also useful to know how angels operate. They are typically people that have their own investment criteria, and because they're individuals, they can vary widely. No two angels really are the same at all. Just because one angel says no to an investment, specifically you, doesn't mean that they don't know someone else who will fund you. In general, angels have a much lower barrier to receiving investment than versus, say, a loan or a venture capital investment for a couple reasons. One, they're investing their own money and it's usually in small chunks. So if they're investing it themselves, it's really just up to them whether or not they feel like doing it. They don't have to get approval by the fund or approval by the board or anything like that. The other reason is that angels typically invest in areas they have expertise in. So they usually will only invest in someone that is in a space they understand well. And if that's the case, then they're probably more confident and more likely to invest. One of the problems with venture capital is they'll invest in anything, and so frequently you'll work with them and they know nothing about your industry, which means they're not confident, which means it's much harder to get money from them. So let's talk a little bit about why do angel investors invest? There's a couple things that are worth knowing and will make it a lot easier for you to approach them. The most obvious reason that they invest is that they want to make money, but you should note that they don't necessarily care about the multiple, as in they give you $1,000. They don't really care if you come back with 2,000 or the potential for 100,000. They're just more interested in general upside, and they have no strict requirements about how big the company could be. If you skip ahead to the venture capital lecture, you can see that's a little bit different for that instance. Now, less obvious reasons that angels invest would include the fact that a lot of times they invest because it aids a business they already have. A lot of times they invest so that it can grease an agreement, or it can help them with networking and recruiting, and it can some way make their already existing business more successful. The last thing you need to understand about why they invest is that a lot of them invest for excitement and prestige. So what I mean by excitement is that angels have money and they want to invest it, but it's rather boring investing into a mutual fund or putting it into some big stock or ETF that doesn't really do anything. So they typically invest in startups or small businesses because it's exciting, because it potentially could be a big business, but it also has a very real likelihood of failure. And then prestige is a big one. They really like to invest in companies so that they can say they're an investor in it, so that they can wear it kind of like a badge to show other people, I invested in this company, it's grown so much, you've all heard of them, now I'm a prestigious investor. There's a lot of investors that have made their careers by being angels. They made an angel investment in very small businesses and now they're quite well known. A great example of that would be a guy named Chris Sacca, if you've ever heard of him. He runs a fund called Lowercase Capital, but he started off with angel investments, made a couple great investments. One was Twitter. He also made investments in a company called Uber. So you'll notice a lot is that angels really like to invest because it makes them sound great or bigger than they really are. So here's some general advice about finding angels and working with them. The best way of looking for angels, in my experience, is to go and look at the industry you're in and then just start trying to connect with people who not necessarily are investors, but are successful. Really, it's part of a more general networking strategy. Say you're making a video game. Look for video games that are very similar to what you're trying to do. If you find one that recently sold their company or has someone in the company that's rather accessible, try to actually meet them and try to approach them on the basis of you're looking for mentorship or someone to bounce ideas off of. It's in general much easier to approach angels if you approach them from the angle of I need mentorship, or I need someone to talk with businesses, or a business deal, etc., etc. If you come at them like I'm looking for money, instantly they kind of tense up and it's much harder to get them to trust you and like your business. Another way of going after this is just to make a list of relevant people in the industry you're going into, even if it's a sub-industry. One great tool for this is actually just LinkedIn, because if you go to LinkedIn, you can search by industry, but the key word that you want to go for after that is just investor, because anyone who lists themselves on LinkedIn as an investor is someone that probably invests a lot and is open to the idea of investing in another similar business. Another piece of advice that sites like AngelList, WeFunder, Gusto, and Funders Club are invaluable for this process. These are essentially social networks for startups and small businesses to find angel investors and venture capital. It works especially well for angels because a lot of angels spend time on there looking for startups that they find interesting. If you spend a lot of time making your page look good and look attractive, you won't be surprised to find a lot of attention from angel investors. The first angel investment I ever took in my first startup was actually through AngelList, and it was in the first 2 months that it ever even launched. Another thing to be aware of is that there are things called angel groups and angel syndicates. A lot of times angels want to invest, but they don't want to spend a ton of time doing what's called due diligence or research on your firm and your market. So they band together and have one person do the research, and then everyone invests as a group and makes a decision as a group. These are viable options, and they're much easier to contact than individual angels. I've added in the resource section some notable angel groups and syndicates. Also on AngelList and WeFunder, you'll find large syndicates. So if you just go after the groups, apply to them through their traditional channels and websites, that's a great first step. The last piece of advice I'll give you is if you're looking for angels and you're trying to go this route for investment, it's easier to go after angels who frequently invest because they have a lower barrier for investment. If you go after an angel who has not yet invested in a company or has only done it once or twice, they spend a lot more time thinking about it, and they're much more risk averse than someone who has a system down and wants to limit how much time they think about it before they make a decision. Okay guys, if you want to go the angel route, heed my advice. The angel game is a little bit weird. It's kind of a snowball system. So you could spend easily 6 months looking for your first angel, find your first angel after 6 months, and then the next month find 20. That's typically how it works. Once you figure out something that works, it works really well. Okay guys, see you in the next lecture.